You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi, and thanks for coming back again to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail. And I am literally on the trail. I normally record these things in a bedroom wherever I'm staying, but I'm currently sitting on a rock in front of the fire overlooking this beautiful site, Burke's Garden. It's referred to as God's Thumbprint, at the top, right by Chestnut Knob Shelter. It's a warm morning. It's 8:27 a.m. on Monday morning, I think it is. On a Monday morning, yes. And I decided to record this today because there's no way I'm going to be able to get anything out to you for another 3 or 4 days till I get to Woods Hole Hostel. So it's been a while, and I've got 3 days worth of stuff and a couple of conversations. So before we get on with the show, let's hear from our sponsor, Sawyer. When I hit the trail in 2014, I soon discovered that I come with the wrong water filter. Everybody else had a Sawyer squeeze. Eventually I bought a squeeze and I loved it. I'm going again this year, and top of my list of things to buy was the new micro squeeze filter by Sawyer. Like all Sawyer stuff, it just works. You can filter up to 100,000 gallons, and their full-size squeeze filter comes with a lifetime warranty. Last year, believe it or not, more than 4 million people got clean water through a Sawyer water filter. But if you think that Sawyer is just about water filters, you could not be more wrong. Nope, they supply everything to protect you, both in the backcountry and the backyard. Protect your gear and clothes as I did with their permethrin fabric treatment, which is 100% odorless after drying. With all the ticks and bugs around, this is an absolute must. They also provide sunscreens and first aid products. Find out more by visiting Sawyer.com. Thanks, guys. You know how much that means to me, and I really appreciate you supporting us for April and May. And hopefully we can get you to keep on for June, July and August while I continue to stagger north. This week has been all about a buddy of mine, Clay Bonnyman Evans. Clay he asked if he could come and spend a bit of time on the trail with me. And since we get on so well, I said, yeah, sure, come along. And so the miles were slightly restricted, although he could have done more miles, but it worked out really nicely. So let's hear from, I think the last time I left you, I was at Trimpy Shelter, about 10 miles short of Partnership Shelter, where I was intending to meet Clay. So here is day number 52. Day number 52, Trimpy Shelter, mile 524.2, to Partnership Shelter, mile 534, only 9.8 miles. Most people were rushing out of Trimpy Shelter to get to Partnership for the 11 a.m. shuttle. A 10-mile hike by 11 a.m. isn't really going to work for me. But because they were all getting up, I was woken. Actually, I remember looking at my phone. It was 4:54 in the morning. And by the time I popped my head out of my tent, it was 5:45 and virtually everybody was gone. There were a couple still in the shelter and two others still. One was hammocking and one was tenting. But as I said, we'd had a mini tented village the day before. I was meeting my buddy Clay Bonnyman Evans. He was coming to visit me, and I'll tell you about how that worked out in a minute. But I was particularly interested in how well people have slept in the shelter because, as I said the previous night, the mice were just running around, just having a blast all the time. But apparently there were no reports of mice overtaking the shelter, although one guy said they did run across his head once, so that was nice. And because I only had this 10-miler, and so I was meeting Clay, I was very relaxed, and I didn't check the profile. I saw later that it was basically up for 4 miles and down for about 6 miles. The great thing about it, though, was that the climbs were all short and the climbs down were all gentle. As I said before, I can't stand these 6-7 miles ups or downs when they're constantly up and down. you need some variation just to allow your muscles to, I don't know, lose the lactic acid or disengage in some cases. But I say, I didn't check the profile, but this is what it turned out to be. And I've been making a big thing about not checking the profile quite as much as I used to, because it was interrupting the flow of my hike. And I am hiking so much better by just not keep looking to see where I am. You know, when you've got 3.1 miles to go to a shelter, you check again, I don't know, 20 minutes later, and it's 3.0 miles or, I don't know, 2.9 miles. So what? I was doing it all the time, though. I don't know why. Maybe I thought in that 0.3 of a mile or 0.2 of a mile, I'd walked the 2 or 3 miles, but of course I hadn't. And really, it's about how much time it takes you to get there. And I'm really a 2 mile an hour hiker right now. That's the way I think that's how I was back in 2014 as well. It was a very comfortable hike, actually. The weather was hot, but some of the first 4 miles included really long, flat paths through trees, and they were lit by light. And I don't know whether you're aware that I've got a YouTube channel. It's under Steve Adams, but put Steve Adams or Mighty Blue on the AT or on the Appalachian Trail, and you'll find it. And I've got a lovely path through the tree. A video. I will have a video of the path through the trees. It was absolutely glorious. I think I mentioned that I did this. This is slightly taking time out of focus in some ways, but when I released my last episode, I mentioned that I actually sat down on a tree, on a log somewhere. Might have been a rock. It was a rock, actually, I think. And I was talking about this young woman called Hawkbait. And as I was talking about her, up she walked. So, you know me, I thought I'd speak to her. And I interviewed her, and she's a lovely, lovely young lady. She's ahead of me now. But let's hear from Hawkbait. Okay, funnily enough, I was sitting here recording, and I'm mentioning Hawkbait, and here she is. She just walked up behind me. Hi, Hawkbait. How are you?
I'm good.
What's your real name?
My name is Charlotte.
Oh, yeah? And Hawkbait is one of the people the world cannot do without, because what do you do for a living?
I'm a nurse.
So you're able to quit, and you're going to go back somewhere else when you finish the trail?
Yeah, that's right. I quit my job to do this trail. It ended up being the right time. I wanted to do something new, and I've been wanting to do the trail for years and years. So
Really?
it just worked out. Yeah.
So how does the time manifest itself? Because you could have done this last year, you could have done it next year. Why this year?
I know. I don't know. I was just at a place with work where I really wanted to try something new, and I ended up having another friend who's also a nurse who wanted to do the AT with me. Mm-hmm. And we started off together in March, and she did a month of it with me. Right. And now I'm continuing on as a solo hiker.
Was she intending to do the whole thing?
She was always just going to do part of it. She didn't know how far she was going to go, though.
And did you miss her?
Yeah, definitely. The first day that I was solo was really tough.
I'm sure it is, but now you're out here, don't you find it an easy place to be alone?
Totally. It's really great being a solo hiker, and it's just...
Because you're not responsible for anybody else, are you?
Yeah, you're just on your own schedule. You can take a tea break whenever you want and just go into town.
And I've got to tell you, I wanted to rename her Stealth, because she surprises the crap out of me every single time. She finds the most comfortable places to sit, which is amazing how you do that, by the way, because this is really uncomfortable rock I'm sitting on right now. And then she'll suddenly say, Mighty Blue.
You surprised me today, though. I didn't know you're going to be sitting here.
Yeah, well, I've been here for about 20 odd minutes. It's just been a lovely doing it. So are you going to do any other adventures after this? Do you think the Triple Crown is a possibility?
For the moment, I have absolutely no interest in doing another long trail. I know I hear people talking about the PCT a lot, and not for me.
Why? Is that because this is more exhausting than you thought?
I think I just feel like it's a once in a lifetime experience, and I don't know. I just don't really have. I really wanted to do the AT in particular.
Right. So. Yeah. And is it living up to what you thought it'd be?
Oh yeah, it's been a blast. Yeah. It's been a blast. It's been harder than I expected. But really
last
fun.
night we had it was like mini tent city, wasn't it? Last night in the camp.
Oh yeah, we must have had 20 people there.
The bubble is definitely catching us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Probably
I'd
bringing
say so.
norovirus as well, by the way.
Oh, no.
I make a point of washing my hands with soap and water every day. You never know. You never know, do you? You just never know, yeah. Okay. Well, look, thanks for talking to us, and good luck with the rest of your journey.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. What a lovely young woman. And I love the fact, I've mentioned this before, I love meeting these youngsters. I know it sounds a bit patronising, and I apologise for that. But these younger people who, when I was younger, it was career, marriage, kids, doing all those different things. And these younger people, they know they can get jobs elsewhere. And she's a nurse. She can work elsewhere. And so she's made this commitment. She wanted to do this, and I really admire it. And funnily enough, soon after, Devon, the other girl I'd walked with in the Grayson Highlands, walked past as well. I didn't know Devon quite as well, so I didn't interview her. And she, as is Hawkbait, are both ahead of me now. Eventually, I met up with Clay. Clay had walked back from the partnership shelter to meet me, and he was on the trail he hadn't bothered bringing a pack, obviously, but he had brought his poles. And he made such a generous offer to me. And I really appreciated this because I didn't know how this was going to work. When you're hiking solo, you do exactly what you want, when you want to do it. You don't have to think of anybody else. But I thought to myself, if I'm hiking with Clay, I've got to pay attention to the fact that he doesn't hike all the time. So he'd be warming his legs up. But I'm aware he's a very strong hiker. He's called Pony because he just keeps on going. He's got strong legs and he keeps on going. But he made this really, what I thought was such a selfless, generous offer to me. He said, look, this is your hike. I'm just here as a friend, and whatever you want to do, hike slowly, hike fast, hike 15 miles, hike 3 miles. When you want to stop, you stop, and I will just follow along with you. And he was absolutely as good as his word. He spent the whole time behind me, so I was setting the pace, if you can use the speed at which I walk a pace. And we just chatted. Clay is a lovely guy. He is chatty, though, let me tell you. But he's not in the least bit offended if you interrupt him. He's not in the least bit offended if you tell him to shut up. And I didn't tell him to shut up at all. It was just great. And it was really good to be hiking closely with somebody, and somebody I knew as well. So I really enjoyed that. I got to this partnership shelter, and actually we didn't use it as a shelter, obviously, because we were actually going to go into Marion, because I had a bunch of things to do, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. And partnership shelter is a very well looked after shelter. It's just by an information office, only about 150 yards after the shelter is an information office where you can get water, you get obviously information, you can make phone calls, and you can call for pizza. So why wouldn't you? I did that last time. There's also meant to be a shower in the shelter, but unfortunately it didn't appear to be working this time. But although I wouldn't have had a shower anyway. So I'd booked this room at the Econo Lodge, and I had plenty to do. And Clay drove me, obviously, because he'd parked his car at the information centre. He drove me into Marion. I had a number of things. I had a package from home, which I needed to swap out some gear and take delivery of some more Trailtopia food. And they very kindly sent me all this food, which was great. I had to then see what food I needed for the next few days. I then had to repack what I was sending home in the box and go back to the post office. Then I had to finish recording for the podcast and put that together, which I did at the time. Then I had to get a notary to notarize my signature on a document and then send that back to to Diane. Then I had to do some laundry, and then we'd already arranged to meet others for dinner. But with Clay's help, I did it all. Found time before we even started any of that to have a lunch and a beer. So I had a burger, so it was great, and really enjoyed that. And in the evening, a whole lot of us met up in a nearby Mexican restaurant. Another listener, a guy called John Duprat, who was hiking, doing a flip-flop, he came into the restaurant and said, "You're Mighty Blue, I'm John Duprat." And we chatted away, and he actually took a little video of me and a picture of me. So that was really nice. His name's Trigger on the trail. So, even though I was doing other things, I met up with hikers in the evening. And in fact, that Mexican restaurant, our table had about, I think, 8 people. And there was another table on the other side of the restaurant with another bunch of hikers, about 8 hikers. So I can see I'm forming, I'm part of a bubble right now. You go in and out of them, but I feel people are starting to catch us up. So that was the end of day number 52. Day 53, Partnership Shelter, mile 534, to the Barn Restaurant in Atkins, Virginia, mile 545.7, 11.7 mile day. The bunch of us who were staying at the Econo Lodge, and there were about 7 or 8 of us, all met for breakfast, and there was a bad outlook for the next few days. Poor old Clay had come to hike with me for 2 or 3 days. Turned out it was 3 days. and the forecast for the first 2 of those days was crappy. I mean, really crappy. And it was a 100% chance of rain, and it didn't let us down. We headed back to the visitor centre with a hiker from, I don't know where she was from actually. Oh, Boulder, Colorado. I believe she was from Colorado, and her name was Rabbit. And she set off, and Clay and I sorted ourselves out and set off after her. And we fell into the way in which I was hiking. This is about what Clay had said to me the day before. You lead the way. I'm just going to stay with your pace. And I'm so glad that worked out that way. And because really, I always found this when I saw 2 people hiking together on my last hike. The person who's second is hiking the hike of the first person, because that first person is setting the pace. I know when I try to hike with people and try to keep up with them, I'd either hike too far, hike too fast, or hard to believe I'd hike too slow. But yeah, I wasn't hiking my pace if I was hiking behind somebody. As Clay let me lead the way the whole time, then it was perfect for me. And this looked like the profile of this one. Once again, I just have a quick glance at the profile in the morning and see what it is. It looked like 5 miles up Glade Mountain and then 6 miles down into Atkins. And so 11-mile hike, that's pretty good. And I've definitely noticed this time that some of these climbs, they were quite short for a start. And I find that some of the switchbacks are definitely now going almost horizontally. So you get a bit of flat relief for a short period of time. Then you start going up again. Then you have another bit of flat relief sometimes. And that really, really helps. And I really feel grateful for that, let me tell you. I was really hiking within myself, and we were chatting again, and it was really, really enjoyable. And the rain, frankly, was kind of sporadic for a while. We were expecting it to really start raining at 11. And it did, and it started getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And once again, I got soaked. I mean, I was wearing I was wearing just a single layer woolen top. So I knew I'd sweat, but I thought if I got wet, it would at least give me some insulation. And waterproofs are just hopeless. Well, the waterproofs I've got are hopeless, let's say. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but they're just not working out for me at all. And within 20 minutes, any waterproof just breaks down, and it's the only bit of gear I'm disappointed with. I've seen a number of different things. Someone's even suggested this cheap Frog Togs stuff from Walmart. There's a poncho, and one guy is very, very happy with it. So I'm thinking about that if I get to another Walmart at some stage in the future. And the 6 miles down into Atkins was pretty gentle, so it wasn't taxing on the knees. So we really had a nice hike, apart from the fact that we were just getting wetter and wetter. And of course, with the rain falling, the paths got much slicker, and I slipped a lot, but I didn't fall. Well, I didn't fall by then anyway. We then got to Settlers Museum. And Settlers Museum is an old school. It's still set up as a classroom. It's a really interesting place to look at. I think it was the last time a school in 1897, something like that. But it's set up as a classroom. It's an amazing place. And the great thing about it is they put a little bit of trail magic in there. I think it's a church puts it in there, and there's a few drinks. So actually, I'm not sure there was a drink when I went there, but there was fruit, there was an apple. It's just nice stuff, and it's a welcome place to visit. And I recall that back in 2014, I was racing for somewhere to camp, and all the undergrowth on the way to the the Settlers Museum was so bad, was so thick, I couldn't find anywhere to put a tent. And there was one spot, there were 2 tents in there, and there just was not place for a third tent. It was getting later and later and darker. And eventually I got there about 7:45 in the evening, just as the sun was going down. And I had a real sigh of relief, and I set my tent up next to the Settlers Museum. I always remember that day. So after that, with the rain still coming down heavily, we knew we had only about, I think, 2 or 3 miles to go. We pushed on to Atkins, and I eventually, and inevitably, had fall number 9, a complete slide, and I just couldn't recover. I went straight over, hurt myself because I landed on the knee I'd cut a couple of days before, so that hurt me. But got up again, shouted number 9, and moved on. Got into Atkins and the Barn restaurant. And we started looking out at what our options were. We both had a sandwich in the Barn restaurant, and our plan was to go to Quarterway Inn, 10 miles away, and get them to slack pack us the following day to bring us back to the Barn and then go to Quarterway again. So I called them. They had a room. They said they could accommodate us, but they couldn't come and get us. But they for a while. And so we'd be waiting there for about an hour and a half, because I think it was 45 minutes there and 45 minutes back, or something like that. And I was wetter and wetter, and I was wet from the waist down. I dried myself off at the top, but I was getting soaked from the waist down. I could not find another shuttle. There are a number of shuttles in the area. I could not find one. In the end, I decided we're going to go to the Long Neck et Lair. It's an alpaca farm, of all things, hosted by Ken and Cindy Parkin. What a great place that was. That was literally 200 yards, 300 yards away. We got picked up, went there. Big, huge garage converted into a beautiful house. Great wooden floors, big kitchen, just dramatic setting, and sofas, and people were slumped around watching movies. The people I remember being there were Gopher, Peach, who I interviewed before, Papa Bear, who was hiking with Gopher and Peach, and a young lad called Aladdin, who didn't seem like he wanted to go anywhere. He was watching all the Marvel movies on the big screen TV, on the DVD. So we kind of sat around and watched DVDs for about 3 hours. It was very, very relaxed. I'd actually booked a private room for me and Clay. There was just one bed. I said straight away, there's no way I'm sleeping with you, mate. So he said, that's all right, I'll sleep on the floor. So I let him. So Clay was happy enough to sleep on the floor while I slept in the bed. I did actually pay more for the room, obviously. And then later in the evening, there's a Mexican restaurant attached to a gas station just opposite the barn. So our host, Ken, took us in this strange vehicle down across the fields to the Mexican restaurant, which was excellent, by the way. And we had a really nice meal. And eventually he came to pick us up again, and I slept very well that night. And I'm sure Clay did as well when he was on the floor. And that's the end of day number 53.
Hey everyone, Chrissy Funk here, aka Rebound. I am seizing this moment to ask you to support an event in an area many of us fall in love with each year. Harpers Ferry Boulevard Trail and Town Alliance and the ATC once again are throwing another fun party this April 27th and 28th. Mark your calendars. It is the 5th annual Appalachian Trail Flip Flop Festival. Again, 27th, 28th, this April. Coming down. So skip the FOMO, listen on. Embrace the weekend champion you are. It's more than just trails in Harpers Ferry and the Town and Boulevard. This event has tons of activities, workshops happening throughout the weekend. It's packed with REI workshops, educational seminars, a fun alumni shindig I'll be at. Hope to see you there. And there'll be bands, vendors, morning yoga, bird watching, ghost tours, and so much more. Okay, one more attempt at piquing your interest. As lashers, weekenders, out and backers, through hikers, we are the guardians of the trail, and this is one way for us to help spread information about protecting and embracing the Appalachian Trail. So please, help get people excited about the Appalachian Trail Flip Flop Festival. Yeah, thanks to my trail brother Mighty Blue, all the generous volunteers to make this happen, and everyone for supporting this cause and helping us spread the word. So do one thing today that centers you, because you rock. Happy hiking all. Cheers.
Day 54. The Barn Restaurant in Atkins, mile 545.7, to VA 610, mile 555.7. Just 10 miles. We knew the rain was coming again, and we were kind of wanted to get out relatively early, but we got up. I actually made breakfast of eggs, my scrambled eggs, which I think are pretty darn good. I made for 4 or 5 of us. Everybody ate every single piece. I should recognise, of course, that we're all hikers, so perhaps they would have eaten even if they were crap, but I know they're pretty darn good. And before we left, Cindy asked us if we wanted to go and visit the alpacas. And Clay, being a bit of an animal lover, said, "Oh, yes, please." So I said, "Yeah, of course, let's go down and see them." And I talked to Cindy about alpacas. Let's hear about them. Okay, in a journey that so far has yielded me 4 flipping squirrels in 550 miles, I've been pretty short of wildlife. And I'm here right now with Cindy parking with her alpacas. I'm ducking down, and these things are surrounding me. So tell me about alpacas. What are they?
Alpacas are camelids, and they are from South America, Chile, Peru.
Right.
They've been in the United States, I think, since about the 80s. You can no longer import them. So
really?
If you get an alpaca, you're going to get it American bred.
Right. Do you breed them yourself here?
We do.
You do?
We do. Gestation for an alpaca is 11 and a half months.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
And Clay here, by the way, Clay's enjoying feeding them. Not my scene at all, but okay.
So, and they're bred primarily for their fiber.
Right.
In Peru, they do eat them. I personally think it would be an expensive meat. They're not really large animals. An alpaca tops out at about 190 pounds.
Really?
Yes.
And they got no upper teeth, apparently, so I cannot get bitten by an alpaca, which is a good thing to know.
Yes, they do have, the males have fighting teeth in the very back, which look a little serious, but we have them, the vet takes care of those.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. In the wild, they use it to castrate another male.
Oh, my God.
I know, it's horrible.
God almighty, that doesn't sound very good.
I know.
God, I can't see that cashing on.
I mean, who would think? You're looking at this, right?
Yeah, they look so friendly, don't they?
Yeah, they're super friendly.
So what do you weave?
I weave, but we shear them once a year, so we'll do that in May, and then after we do that, then we take the fiber, and I send it to a fiber mill. I don't spin or anything here.
Right.
So it goes to the fiber mill, and I have it sent back to me as roving or yarn.
Right, but I can tell you, by the way, the background noise you hear are chickens. Clay, for some reason, is trying to catch them and get them, and he's just picked one up.
There you go.
This isn't exactly fulfilling my wildlife quota. You know, there's no bears or anything like that, but they are so darn cute. So, how long have you had these for?
This is 5 years I've had them.
Oh, really? And how many new ones have you had?
I started with 10. I'm up to 19.
Oh, wow. That's not bad, is it?
Not bad at all. I did not breed any last year, so I won't have babies this year. I'm a teacher, so I spent my summer waiting for babies.
Oh, right.
And this year I want to take a little trip.
Oh, wow. How cool is that?
Yes,
How cool is that? But they're lovely looking animals, and thanks for talking to us about them.
You're welcome.
Cheers. I must say, these are cute-looking animals. They really are. And I really enjoyed seeing them. I'm not a big fan of stroking this sort of animals, but I had a little feel of their coats, and they are beautiful. And Cindy weaves the stuff, so it was really nice to do. We had a really nice start in the meadows before heading back into the woods. And there's something about being in a meadow that is just so freeing. And both Clay and I were just reveling in it, and we kept up our same pace as before. It was another day of chatting with Clay. You know, it is so companionable, and I think I found a really good hiking partner only because he's hiking at my pace. But it was really, really enjoyable to do. There were two quite big climbs, but once again, there was nothing with too steep an elevation to kill me off. And the rain was holding off, but just before a climb, we had to put on our wet gear. And I left my waterproof pants off because it wasn't heavy rain. And my pants naturally repel the water a little bit, but if you get too much rain, you soak. What I don't like about wearing waterproof pants is if it isn't raining too hard, you sweat anyway, so your legs get wet anyway, so it's all very unpleasant. If somebody can tell me how to work out hiking in the rain and doing it efficiently, then I'd really appreciate it. So email me and just let me know. We passed Gopher and Peach on the way because they were slack packing the other way, and they asked if it was wet for them going forward, and I kind of wondered why they asked, because it hadn't been that wet, it hadn't been raining that much. But I soon found out why, because after that, almost immediately after we'd spoken with Gopher and Peach, where they'd just come from, the trail was running with water and really, really slippery. But even though I had many slips, there were no more falls at all that day. So I'm still at 9 falls. And at one point, Clay and I came upon a little clearing in the woods, which was, I think, a small tenting area. I think there was a fire ring there, and there was a guy standing behind the foliage, and I could see a stream beyond him. And we said to him, "Is that the way?" And he said, "Yes, this is the way." So I didn't think about it, and we just followed him for about 50 yards before we realised we were no longer on the trail. We'd already crossed 2 streams without what we call, I suppose, the helping rocks. When it comes to the streams which are on the trail, often these trail clubs have put down rocks so that you can step across them without getting your feet too wet. And that's so helpful. These 2 streams had no help at all, which should have been a clue. And I said to the guy, "This is not the right way." And he was looking a bit confused himself about it. We retraced our steps, went back to the little clearing, and we could see a white blaze on the other side. I mean, while it's tough to get lost on the Appalachian Trail, you've just got to keep an eye out for the blazes, because it is quite important. So having retraced our steps, we went on. Got to Virginia 610, about 0.3 miles to the west, and it says to the west, whichever way you're actually facing. West actually means left. I don't know why it just doesn't say 0.3 miles to the left. There was a quarter way in, and this lady called Cindy, or Chunky, that was a hiking name. She's not the least bit chunky, by the way. We were it was a very well organised hostel. There was a drying room there. We took off our clothes to use loaner clothes. I took the opportunity for a bit of cross-dressing, and I wore myself this multicoloured skirt, and it was kind of weird actually. I wasn't terribly sure how people would take to it, but they just, well, fine, put on a skirt, happy days. I was chatting with the guests. Some of them were watching the movie Hunt for Red October, so we let them finish their movie. Somebody brought some muffins into the house, and we were all sitting around chatting. Someone said, "Let's watch another movie," and so we started watching Lonesome Dove. Lonesome Dove is 6.5 hours long. Started watching it about lunchtime. It was dark when it actually finished, and only me and one other guy, Fancy Pants, watched the entire film. I absolutely loved it. I made a meal and went to bed. This time I'd booked a private room, and Clay was in the bunk room. And frankly, the bunk room would have been beautiful as well. It is a really, really nice place to go. And we were looking forward to the famous breakfast for the following morning. But that was the end of day number 54. Day 55. VA 610, mile 555.7, to Chestnut Knob Shelter, mile 569.7. 14 miles, which is our longest day so far of these 3 days we've been together. And really, this looked like it was going to be our toughest day, not only because it was 14 miles, but because there was many more ups and downs. So we knew we were going to end at Chestnut Knob Shelter, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute. It's an amazing place, it really is. But before we set out, we had to have breakfast, of course. And I tell you, Chunky, Tina, had made some amazing food. Baked eggs, some fancy pancakes, I cannot tell you what they were called, but they were beautiful. with cream. There was honey, homemade bread and jam. There was some sort of sausagey meat as well. It was magnificent. You can have as much as you wanted. So I did. So I had tons and tons of calories to get going. And really, the whole stay at Quarterway Inn is another place I highly recommend. You don't have to stay in the private room. That costs a little bit more, obviously. But really, the bunk rooms were immaculately clean, and it really was a good place to stop. So now the plan, Clay was going to hike up to Chestnut Knob Shelter, stay the night, which was, and I'm now talking on Monday morning. So we were hiking on Sunday, Easter Sunday. And then he was going to stay overnight Easter Sunday and then hike back what is now today. And he's already left, so everybody's left. He's hiking back to Quarterway Inn, where he may well be adopting a dog. A dog had turned up at the house, and they couldn't find the owner, and the dog's been hanging around for some time. And the plan is that Clay is going to take the dog back to where he lives, and either adopt it or make sure it's properly looked after and sorted out, and a home found for it. So that'd be nice. We started walking through a meadow once more. But once again uphill, and this is an uphill meadow that actually had switchbacks. Most meadow walking goes pretty much straight, but this had switchbacks to get higher and higher. And then, of course, we got back in the woods, and there were more climbs and more climbs. But I really feel comfortable with doing these smaller miles. It's relatively easy, so you get quite a bit of rest. So I found myself working my way through it quite well. And with the last hill to come, which is about 4 miles, I think it is, uphill, going over 2,000 feet. It's quite a climb. And so we were so pleased when we came upon some Trail Magic, and they gave us a soda and an ice cream sandwich, which was really nice as well. So I headed up the climb, and I recall from coming up to Chestnut Knob Shelter back in 2014, even though it wasn't a very nice day, I recalled a lot of meadow walking, but this seemed to be a lot of walking on the mountain. But once again, I don't know whether they've altered these switchbacks or just made them easier, or if I'm just getting stronger and stronger. I hope I'm getting stronger and stronger. But when we were in the woods, and I've been listening to Clay for the last couple of days talking about things, and one of the things he does is he gives back with the Conrock crew. He's done, I think, 4 weeks of trail maintenance with the Conrock crew. And the way in which Clay talks about it with a passion is something I think everybody needs to listen to, because we're hiking on trail. And this is a line I think he said, I'm not sure he says it in the interview, but forgive me if he did. But one of the things he says, if we don't do something about this now, there won't be a trail to hike, maybe in as little as 10 years. I'm not sure if that's true, and that may be alarmist in some ways, but I can see that there's tons of work still needs to be done to the trail to stop it just eroding. And I mentioned earlier on how some of these ledges are going to get more and more dangerous as more and more people come over them. So let's hear what Clay has to say. We sat on a rock, had something to eat, and then we had a chat, and I recorded him. Right, I'm here with my buddy Clay Bonnyman Evans, Pony. Hi, Clay.
How's it going?
Well, you probably know, because we've been hiking together now for a couple of days. We met, Clay walked towards me from Partnership Shelter, and we stayed in Marion, then we went to Atkins, and now went on the way to Chestnut Knob Shelter. How are you finding this as coming straight into it from, I've been through hiking, and yet you're clearly already stronger than I am going up the hills. How do you find getting up those hills?
It's fine. I mean, I run back home. I miss having hills, honestly, so it's great. I haven't mentioned it, but yeah, my glutes are sore every night.
Oh, good.
Yeah, but I love it, I just like being back in the mountains and being on the AT. So
was it now tonight we're going to get to Chestnut Knob, we're going to stay the night there, then you're going to turn around and go back. What's it going to be like leaving us to go forward? Is there a tinge of jealousy?
There's a big tinge of, I would even call it's going to be, I already am in a sense of mourning, because I like making that progress northbound on the trail. And because of the way I've figured out how I'm going to do it, you're going to go north. I'm going to turn around and hike back south, and it will be very sad.
And you may very well be adopting a dog. Is that right?
It is very possible that I will be walking back to the Quarterway Inn hostel, which is fantastic, by the way.
Yep.
Mile 555.7. And there's been a stray dog hanging around there that it looks like, unless things change, I will probably be taking back home with me. Get him fixed, get him cleaned up, and at minimum find him a home with somebody. And if he works with our dog family, we may keep him.
Now, when you hiked this trail in 2015 and 2016, and you were telling me that this particular shelter, not mall shelter, has some resonance for you. Tell us about that.
It has a couple of resonances, but one of them was my mates, as Mighty Blue would call them, and I, 3 young guys. We'd been hiking together for, since Over Mountain Shelter. We made a great crew, and we'd gotten a little bit fed up with rude snorers. Now, everybody snores some on the trail.
Tell me about it.
But we really realized that, and I talked to Baltimore Jack, who actually died just a couple weeks after I met him, but he said, listen, I know I snore really loud. And what that means is I'm going to stay in my tent, if at all possible. And we had some bad experience with really rude snorers. So we put up a sign here where we planted our flag very politely saying, if you're a snorer, and you know it, please be kind enough to stay in your tent. Thank you very much.
This was the end of a 23-mile day, wasn't it?
26. We came from Partnership to here, yeah.
Now, I know that you have, and last night we stayed at the Quarterway Inn, which, as you said, was a great place to stay. And you get on your soapbox from time to time about this particular issue because we have within, now we're lucky enough to be hiking this right now. You believe that unless something is done, we may not be able to hike it in 10 years' time?
Yeah, whatever one thinks of climate change and so forth, there are very clear changes that are happening with weather patterns. There are problems due to warmer temperatures with parasites, which means a lot more trees are going down. And when those trees cross the trail, you guys know if you're hikers, it's not fun to cross them. There are heroes out there in the local trail maintaining clubs and the summer trail repair crews that are sent out by the ATC. Those people need volunteers because otherwise this stuff is not going to get done. When the trail collapses down a hillside, somebody has to rebuild it. When it's washed out, somebody has to come in and hoist 500-pound rocks and build a French drain. All of that is done by local maintaining clubs, which do kind of the lighter stuff. And the ATC has regional trail crews. The one I've worked for 4 weeks since I left the trail in 2016 is the Conarock crew out of Virginia. And we do the heavy work. It's really fun. You go into the woods, you camp, you work very hard, just like you do when you're hiking. You meet a lot of interesting people.
Do you camp at a shelter or do you just set up tent sites?
Set up our own camp.
Right.
And there's a big tarp. We cook. It's just like being on the trail. And the thing is, the average age of people who are doing this work is incredibly high. For the local clubs, it's like 66.
Incredibly high being my age, exactly that, yeah.
Well, just imagine these are the people that are out keeping the trail clear.
Totally.
They're wielding a chainsaw. So the thing is, I know young people everybody has to make a living and do this stuff. But even if you just give one day, even if it's not on the AT, even if it's just your local open space department, it's incredibly important. And if you think you really want to give back, working for an ATC trail crew is a lot of fun and very, very rewarding.
Yeah, and I have heard that. I've had the version of that which is not a soapboxing at all. Clay really feels that, and he's right. And I've already noticed some erosion, a lot of erosion, which I've warned some hikers about following me right now. If it gets wetter and more slippery, 1 or 2 people are going to go down a hill, and that will not be a good thing. The outcomes will not be good. So the work is necessary all the time. So, we always thank them when we see them. And, obviously I thank you for doing it as well. But it's been great hiking with you. I tell you, I've got to tell you, talking with Clay is a somewhat one-sided conversation. Because he chats.
Hashtag ponytails.
And
Hi Lava Monster. Hi Patches.
And no, we've had a really good time. And it's really nice, actually. to hike with somebody and chat. And I'm particularly glad the way Clay was very, very generous with this. He said, this is your hike and I will hike the speed that you want to hike. So he's constantly lets me lead the way. So I know I'm hiking at my pace and I really enjoy spending the time with you, man. So thanks for coming out.
I'm just lucky to get to tag along. That's why I say it's your hike. Whatever you choose, I get to do, and it's a privilege. So thank you.
Okay, buddy. Well, good having a chat with you. Speak to you soon.
All right.
Well, there you have it. Now, not everybody's going to agree with Clay, and I understand that. But really, giving back in some form, whether it's financially or putting some hours in, is going to be important if we want others to enjoy the experience we've had on this. I'm not really sure I'm a good person to suggest this because I haven't done any trail work. I like the idea of it, but I live in Florida, and yes, it will be a commitment for me to go up there and do it, and I will certainly give it some thought. But if you're relatively close to the trail and it means something to you, either give some money or do some work, and it will be very well received, I'm sure. But anyway, once we finished that, we carried on walking, and we got out eventually into these meadows, and there was, as I remembered then, a lot of walking through a lot of meadows. I say a lot, probably 3 or 4, maybe 5 meadows, interspersed with walks through the trees. And it was really quite nice, actually, doing that. And we just loved coming up through the meadows. And we just reveled in the day. The weather was better and better. There was no rain yesterday, by the way. I didn't actually mention that. There was no rain at all. Eventually, you emerge through the trees. And by the way, remember this, if you're listening to this, there's no water at the shelter. There is a privy, but there is no water. You can get water. There's a pond just down about 0.2 or 0.3 miles before the shelter. You can get it from there, and apparently it's a spring-fed pond, but I'd rather get something that comes running off the mountain. And 50 yards, 30 yards before that, there's a little gravel road. You take that down there for 100 yards, and there is a pipe you can get water coming from the mountain, which I preferred personally. So make sure you get your water for the day or for the evening before you go up to Chestnut Knob Shelter. But you get up here, and the shelter is enclosed. It's an old warden's shelter, I believe. It's got sort of bunk beds, which is kind of neat. Wooden, obviously, with no mattresses or anything like that. But you're right at the top of this opening, which looks out over a place called Bert's Garden, known colloquially as God's thumbprint. And I'm looking at it now, and it's a limestone sinkhole, which obviously sank some time ago, leaving this beautiful ridge all around it, which I intend to be walking today for about 8 miles, which I'm going to be doing when I finish putting the show out. And it's absolutely glorious as it is. So I decided I wanted to set up camping, so I set my tent up last night, and Clay and Fancy Pants stayed in the shelter, and then 2 others turned up, Logan and I can't remember his name, some German guy I think it was, and we put our tents up, and it was quite high wind, and it was quite cold, but I was quite snug in my sleeping bag. I didn't realise that the wind was going to just disappear overnight, and I had a lot of condensation in the tent in the morning. But really, it's been a great place to stay, and Clay has just left me. So that is the end of day 55, and we're now entirely caught up.